Good morning. I'd like to call this County Commission meeting for February 28th to order. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's take a moment of silent prayer. Before the roll call this morning, I want to remind everybody to please turn their cell phones off. Start the roll call with Commissioner Doug Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Mike Stephen.
Here.
Commissioner Vicki Cos.
Here.
Commissioner Mike Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Jeff Culverson, all here. Public comment. I think we have Louis Klemp. Did you want to speak for public comment this morning, Mr. Klemp? Please come forward.
Yeah, because got an army guy back there.
Good morning.
I like to get a little extra time. My name is Louis Klemp, 1816 Pine Ridge Drive, 913-683-0501. The reason I came is I went to city the other day, and as usual, we got a lot of good elected people, but they don't have any history. History is the most important thing there was. I'd like to spend 10 minutes talking about Truman. But we got a very nice letter to the editor from the Lansing Times. Thank you, John. And she's talking about how Leavenworth is going downhill. She's now in El Paso, Texas. And if you haven't been to El Paso, Texas, you've missed out on a lot. And it was a very nice article. If anybody wants to hear it, you can get it out of the Leavenworth Times. Commission sent a letter on illegal immigration. Thank you very much. That's an honor. The city ought to get off theirs, and everybody else ought to get off theirs, because if you don't know what they're there for, then you don't know the Chinese. Speaking of the potholes, I tried to give a dissertation to the city. As usual, the city, they don't say thank you. They don't say thank you for coming. They don't say anything. They don't really care. And if they get a hold of Portland, Oregon, they could find out how to better take care of their roads and wouldn't have to fill 450 potholes. And the commissioner, you had a discussion on nuisance legislation. That's not a nuisance, believe it or not. That is history. When you go by an old farmhouse, well, let's go by a house in the city. There's where Julius lived. There were, oh, you knew Julius, didn't you? Yeah. You name all the people that lived on Spruce Street, and it does bring back memories. And the new people coming in, they don't care about memories. People in the South, they don't care about memories. I thought it was interesting. One of the major developers out in south part of the county is Miles Construction, right, or what you want to call them. They wouldn't be there if it hadn't been for Louis Klemp and two other commissioners. Well, one other commissioner, because the neighbors came in and said, don't let them park their trucks out there at their house. It's going to destroy the neighborhood. Well, it didn't destroy the neighborhood. They're now out on 2440, and it's a heck of a good process. The last thing would be, because I know it's getting close, and I hate to hear the buzzer, that's knocking on the door. When you start having medical problems as a senior, we knock on the door. You guys don't. But there was a great process of, you're missing $3 million. The city could get $5 million, and that could be led towards property tax and many other things. But we're letting the system get off, and it's a shame. Port Leavenworth needs to pay that tab coming back and forth across the river, or you'll never find another direction to bring in money to help the property tax. And maybe the people in the south part of the county don't care because they build very nice houses, and they like nice roads so they can drive their Cadillacs and everything else. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Clint.
Thank you, Louis.
We have any other public comment in the room? I don't have anyone signed up. We'll move on to administrative business. Mr. Lothry, do we have any administrative business, or Mr. Van Paris? Any other commissioners?
I do.
Yes, sir.
Just a couple things, minor stuff though. They're looking to see how many of us are going to be in the St. Patty's Day parade. I didn't know if the same group's going to run together, and Vicky's going to be in charge of that, or you can be out of town.
Well, I'll be here.
Can you drive, or make Jeff drive and do that? All four of them? Okay. Becky was asking him something. And also,
Are you going?
We're having a truck in there.
I'll be there.
and this is really on Doug's turf, but I just wanted to remind everybody, I'm sure he's going to bring up the groundbreaking on March 8th at 1 p.m. for the 150th.
Baser.
Yeah, that's a really a good thing that we're partners with. So I'll be attending. So I didn't know if everybody else was going to be. If there's over
Put it
three.
on the agenda.
Yeah. Okay. That's all I have.
KC's got a budget meeting presentation in El Dorado that I might be going to, so I won't be able to do that.
Okay.
If you guys are going, we'll
represent-
have plenty of people there.
We'll represent you well.
Any other administrative business from the commission?
Not at this time. We'll
Okay.
talk about it at the end.
Okay. We can move on to consent agenda then.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Any more discussion? Start voting with Commissioner Doug Smith.
Aye.
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 Aye. Consent agenda passes 5-0. Formal board action, consider a motion to approve Board Order 2024-1, transferring funds from the Courthouse General Department in General Fund to the Equipment Reserve Jail Fund.
This is just merely a formality. A couple of weeks ago, you made a motion to allow some of the funding from KDAD to move over to Equipment Reserve Jail Fund for the sheriff to use inside of the jail, which is an allowable expense through the KDAD funding. So this is just merely
The paperwork to do
for the
that.
books.
Yeah, that's all it is.
Yeah.
Because of the audit.
Okay.
I don't have anything else to say on that. I'm looking over at Mike because he usually does.
Well, of course, I don't agree that we should move that money over there.
Okay.
But
Thank you.
Since the board has decided that they're going to move that money,
Thank you, Mike.
just to reiterate to folks that are watching,
you
we
did it.
fully funded the sheriff's department in the budget. We reduced the public works department budget by $1.2 million. We received this additional $480,000, and my goal was to get that $480,000 into public works for roads, bridges, and infrastructure. And I felt like since we had fully funded the budget, and since there was an equipment reserve presently in existence, and there was about $1 million in that fund, that the monies for the television system at the jail should have been used from the existing equipment.
Okay. That being said, I make a motion to approve Board Order 2024-1, transferring funds from the Courthouse General Department in General Fund to the Equipment Reserve Jail Fund.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Voting starting with Doug Smith,
Aye.
No.
Commissioner Stevens, Commissioner Cobb.
Aye.
Aye.
I vote aye. Motion passes 4-1. Thank you, Janet.
Thank you.
Secondly, board actions, consider a motion to appoint a treasurer to the Sherman Township Board.
Around the 1st of February, I received a notification from Jim Watts, who was the Sherman Township treasurer, that he was seeking to resign. At that time, I think I made an announcement to the board at a meeting, and I proceeded to put a news release in the Tonganoxie Mirror announcing the vacancy in the Sherman Township treasurer position. This is done for each township opening that we receive due to a resignation, because at that point it's up to the commissioners to appoint. It said applications must be submitted to the county clerk's office at the Leavenworth County Courthouse prior to Thursday, February 22nd at noon. Before this notice had even went into the paper, we did have one applicant that did apply, Carol Floyd. That application the letter showing interest in that position was sent up to Becky, which she then did forward that and give you a copy of Carol's letter of interest.
Okay.
So that's the notification that I have received.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'd
Yes,
like
sir.
to move that we appoint Carol Floyd to the Sherman Township Board.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Was it on our website also?
I did not put it on the website. If it's not a requirement, I'm more than
Right.
glad to make sure that it does go to or is put on the website.
I think it's a good
Any
idea.
Further, I don't mind doing that at
Yeah,
all.
I think that'd be a good idea personally.
I actually had talked to Stuart Sweeney, who's also on the Sherman Township Board, to make sure that I got the paper correctly. And he said, yes, their official notification is through the Tonganoxie Mirror. And so at that point, I did proceed. Because even though the Leavenworth Times is the official paper of Leavenworth County, we would publish any such notice in the official paper of, whatever township had the vacancy. So
Okay.
I did reach out for that purpose.
Linwood doesn't have a paper.
Not anymore.
Thanks, sir.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Sir, did you have a question or information? Yes, sir. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Rich E. Wilson, 21728 Linwood Road, Linwood. I happen to be the treasurer for the Reno Township and also for the Fire District 2. And that's why I'm up here, is for the Fire District 2, because anybody who's on the Sherman Board and the Reno Board are automatically on the Township Board. I didn't know that Stuart had been told anything about this. Most of us board members had no idea there was a deadline. And we had one person that came into a board meeting, it would have been on the 12th, and talked to us about that, and actually, I think, put his information in yesterday. But we had no idea there was a deadline. There's been 4 or 5 of us talk to this gentleman. We didn't know that Carol had applied. And so I would like to ask the board if they could put this back a week or two, only because next Monday is our Fire District Board meeting. And if we could see about getting Carol and I think his name is Rick to our meeting so we could actually find out some more about both of them. And I know it's not our final say on to whether they're on the board or not, but it would be kind of nice to know how they fit in, because right now the board has been running pretty well, and the fire district's up and running and doing quite well. So that's all I wanted to say.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
I just got one comment, if I can make it.
Yes, sir.
I understand what he's saying. And by the way, y'all doing a good job down there, but doing what's safe. But somebody has followed our procedure at this point. Now, if we want to change it, that's something else. But when someone's followed our procedure, to send it back again, I think would be the wrong move at this time.
Yeah, and I think these come up. How often do these change over?
Periodically.
Probably
Fairmount
more.
a few years ago.
Yeah.
Or so lately, like Doug said, but we do follow the same procedure each time. And if, I think one time it was postponed, but we didn't have any letters at the time. I think it was postponed for any openings. And I don't even remember what township that was in.
I think we did extend it on yours one time, Sherman Township?
We
one.
didn't receive notification. I didn't get the notification on that one, and I think we did kind of move our policies because now when this resignation came up, Janet came up to the board and told us that Jim Watts had resigned, and that's in the minutes of the board about 30 days ago. And so if it was a surprise, I would say I would be more inclined to say, let's kick it back. But it was in the minutes. If you watch the video, it was on the video. It was published in the paper. And Jim Watts also announced his resignation at the meeting of the fire district. So the notice was there that he was his position. And I just wish this gentleman had reached out to either Janet or myself or one of the board members, before. I got the call last night. I had no idea that he was interested. But I did say I'd like to have his name so when board positions come open, we can, know that he's interested. But I know Janet is a graduate Carol is a graduate of Linwood High School. And she served as the treasurer of Sherman Township for 12 years. And she also was a firefighter for 14 years, so she's well qualified. She did follow the procedures. I don't think it would be fair to not follow the procedures.
It's your district too, Mike. Is this your district?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, so we followed all the procedure we were supposed to follow for the application. And there was the deadline, and the deadline's passed, right?
We did.
Okay.
We did. The reason I make it like I did it on Thursday, the 22nd, is this way the board, Becky has time to get it on the agenda for you guys to consider the appointment.
Okay.
And if a vacancy comes up, I do like, when you talked to me last night, you talked about putting it on your township website. I think that's a good idea, but that would be more township than county. So maybe going forward we can.
We probably should have put it on our website in the future.
Yeah, I think that'd been a good idea. Yeah.
Let's
So
face it,
we'll try to make
us
it.
old guys don't want to read the paper.
Yeah.
I will make a point to put any
Thanks, Doug.
other news releases, not only this one, but anything else
That'd be great.
We may have on our website.
That'd be
And
great.
don't forget to put it on our TikTok.
Everything.
There you go.
Okay.
So now, will this position have to be on the ballot in a few years? Or?
This position, she will have to file by the 1st of June.
Oh,
Be on
okay.
So
the
it's
ballot.
just a
right.
filling
So
the
the
remainder.
It
Yeah,
is for
yeah, if
less
they
than
want
a
to.
You
year.
could file today.
So the other applicant could file for that also.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. We have
I'd encourage him to do that.
a motion and a second
Yeah.
on the floor. Starting voting with Commissioner Doug Smith.
Aye.
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 Motion passes. I vote aye, 5-0. Consider
I will
motion.
notify Carol and make some notes about the website. And I will also notify her and Mr. Drake, if you would like, that the filing deadline is the 1st of June for this position in Sherman Township.
Sounds
Okay,
good.
sounds good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Consider a motion to approve the 2024 Solid Waste Committee member roster. Morning, Tammy. How are you?
Good morning.
Slide in this morning?
The roster didn't change. I just need approval in regular session so I can send it to KDHE.
Okay.
Now, is this the same as like we just did? Can they apply for these positions? Or does the committee just appoint them?
They do if we have an opening for haulers,
Okay.
but we don't have any openings.
Okay. That's pretty easy. If there's any more discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the 2024 Solid Waste Committee member roster.
Second.
Motion and a second. Start voting with Commissioner Doug Smith.
Aye.
Aye.
Commissioner Cobb.
Aye.
I vote aye. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Tammy.
Thank
Have a
you.
great day.
You
That was
too.
easy. Next, consider a motion to authorize EMS to accept the proposal from DH Pay Systems Integration Group to update and replace the electronic door locking system to EMS Station Number 3 in the amount not to exceed $19,561. Good morning, Jamie.
Good morning, Commissioners. I provided a request in regards, as you just read, our door system up at Station 3 has essentially end of life for some of the locks. We have 2 locks up there that have failed. When we called for repairs to those locks, they're unable to get parts for those locks. To replace those locks, it will not integrate into the controller because of the end of life and software and such. So we're kind of at that dilemma of the system needs to be upgraded, and that's where we're at. So we got the proposal from DH Pace on what that would cost. The nice part is the wiring and all those type of things are already in place, so it's really just kind of switching out the hardware in the control panel as well as the door locks that are at Station 3. We do operate the system at all of our systems, so all of these are all integrated into one. So this is how we kind of operate on a day-to-day basis without having to physically issue keys to employees.
Funds are available. Funds are available for this project.
The funds are going to come from the EMS reserve account.
Yeah, I know it. I just want everybody else to know that it's not something outside of our budgeted authority. Okay.
And this is an item that was not budgeted for, but it's in the miscellaneous.
It's exactly.
amounts. And these are the types of things that come up when people say, why do you have a miscellaneous?
That's where I was going
budget
with it,
item?
Chairman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we were fortunate enough to be able to receive a grant to switch out ventilators 2 years ago, which allows some of that shifting of priorities of those funds now to cover some of these type of things.
Sounds good.
Looks like the courthouse miscellaneous is going to have to pay for all the buildings.
Was it planned?
It was not planned.
I make a motion to authorize EMS to accept a proposal from DH Pace Systems Integration Group to update and replace electronic door locking system to EMS Station Number 3 in the amount not to exceed $19,561.
I'll second that.
Have a motion and a second. No further discussion. Begin voting with Commissioner Doug Smith.
Aye.
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 I vote aye. Passes 5-0. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thanks, Jamie.
Next, move on to consider a motion to approve Board Order 2024-2, granting a disaster relief tax abatement for buildings on property substantially destroyed by fire located at 22303 227th Street.
Morning, Bob.
Morning. Just requesting the board order to abate $13,173 in assessed value on tax ID 1-15081 destroyed by fire on the 5th of August in 2023. This is because it happened before August 15th. It is an abatement, not a tax credit. And the home was destroyed by fire.
I'm glad we're able to do these now.
Yeah.
Before-
Well, it is. Yeah.
Before people would have to pay taxes to the end of the
Well,
year
homes.
on a burnt house.
Yeah.
Your area, Mike.
I'll make a motion that we approve Board Order 2024 granting disaster relief tax abatement for buildings on property substantially destroyed by fire located at 22303 227th Street.
Second?
Motion and a second. No further discussion. Begin voting with Doug Smith.
Aye.
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 I vote aye. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Weber.
Now we have.
It is good that we can do this. It's really good.
Might as well stay
Imagine
there.
if you lost your house in a fire, you know,
The last thing you want to do is deal with county admin.
pay taxes.
Bob, you might as well stay there. We'll go ahead and do presentations and discussion items, starting with the county appraiser's quarterly report.
So Friday, change of value notices were required every year to value property as of January 1st. And we're required to send those change of value notices by state law on or before March 1st, and they are being mailed Friday, March 1st. We have 32,430 parcels of real estate that we will be sending notices on. And I have a breakdown, the parcel counts by class, so you can see how they break down. I would draw your attention, there's 998 commercial parcels out of 32,430. You know, that's less commercial parcels in counties much smaller than us have. So we don't have an overabundance of commercial parcels. The property owners have 30 days from the date of mailing that valuation notice to appeal that notice. I believe that falls on a weekend, so that would be April 1st would be that deadline. It's on a Monday, I believe. That goes to Monday, April 1st. We're also send about approximately 5,000 personal property renditions in February. We've 2,150 of those have been returned. It was a couple weeks ago when this report was done. And 1,125 of those have been worked. They have to, by state law, those who own taxable personal property are required to register each year by March 15th with the county appraiser. If they do not, there's a penalty for late filing, a 5% a month up to a maximum of 25%. If it goes 1 year, the failure to file penalty is 50%. We are required to put those on, and we are checked to make sure we do put those on. So we don't have an option in that. And as of right now, only the Board of Tax Appeals has the authority to reduce or eliminate that penalty for excusable neglect. There's some legislation on that I'll get to later on all that. Agricultural properties are appraised at their use value. Those values are by law done by the Director of Property Valuation Division. They're not at market value. Those values for crop ground have decreased an average of 11.5% in the county from 2023 to 2024. That's primarily because of the dry weather conditions we've had over the last few years. And so they're dropping a little bit. Tame grass did increase 4%. Native grass remained relatively flat. So those did change a little bit. And I go on, those are an 8-year average. And so data from 2022 is the last year added on those for the 2024 valuation year because they didn't have 2023s yet compiled. Sales, building permits, you can see this sale prices, and I have that sheet with the average sale prices there. The average sale price countywide increased 4%. The number of single-family sales decreased by 12%. So there was quite a few less, and we had last time we had about this many sales was in 2015. So the number of single-family homes built in the county decreased by 18%. That says from 2021 to 22 again. That's from 2023 to 2024. I'm sorry. Sales ratio, when we looked at trends, we basically saw a 4% trend in sales from 2022 to 2023. And if you look at housing statistics in Kansas, that follows pretty close to what has been reported across the state and in the region. We looked at a number of ways, but ultimately we looked at how values were changed, how sales prices were changing in relationship to what we had them valued at the first of the year, and over through last year it was 4%. And I gave you the sales ratios report there at the bottom. 2023. Now the first one is sale prices that happened in 2023 compared to our January 1st, 2023 values. So all the way through December, January through December, county median was 94. And you can see each, I broke it out by city in rural. Break it down a little bit further. And I listed 2022s there so you can see the difference of where we were last year. Now that's 2022 sale prices compared to January 1st, 2022 values. So we were in the mid-80s%, and if you recall, in my other report I'll show, we did go up significantly last year. This year values did not go up near as much as they did last year. We are a lot closer to it. Now the county for the year is 94%. If you look, that's from January to December. That's all the sales. If you remove sales that are they were remodeled, we didn't know they were remodeled, because we don't have any, we don't see the inside of the homes, or they had maybe had a finished basement that we didn't have listed. If you remove those homes, that ratio climbs to about 96%. So that makes up about 2%. If you look at the average sale prices, while the county did go up 4%, there's a lot of, like Leavenworth remained relatively the same, Lansing remained relatively the same, the Tonganoxie and Baser remained relatively the same. Let's see, Tonganoxie went up a little bit, I'm sorry. Tonganoxie went up a little bit, and Baser remained relatively same. Rural went up a little bit. Linwood, Eastwood, I put them in there. There's only 5 sales, so you can't really judge a lot from those 5 sales. Brings us to what the value increase. If you look at the total value for all reasons, the total valuation from last year went up 4.55%. You can see what broken out, what was due to remodel, new construction, what was revaluation. That says 2.77%. That's the total. If you take and then you can see it from, for each city, Leavenworth was total 4%, Baser was 7.41%, but the lion's share of that was new construction. For Baser, it has more new homes than any other city, certainly percentage-wise. Lansing was 4.83%. Tonganoxie was 5.52%. If you look, if you look at what's just reval percent, they're a lot more consistent. If you look from city to city, and then Easton, that's 11%, but 7% of that was, due to one parcel. Such a low valuation, and there were some changes made to that one parcel, and so it increased significantly, and so that caused 7% basically at one parcel. So values didn't go up 11% in Easton as a whole, more like 4%. Linwood is 2.24%, and rural was 3.69%. I have total residential is 4.61%, commercial is 6.57%. Below what I did, these value increases, that's total valuation. When you just look at total valuation compared residential compared to last year's total valuation. What I did is I took the individual, calculated the percent of increase for every parcel throughout the new construction and those sorts of things, and any classification changes in those, just parcels that were basically the same last year as they are this year, and that comes up to an average of that increase. So your typical was 3.4%. The average, the median was 3%. And for commercial, it's the same thing. Doing that same calculation, it's 5.5%, and the median is 6% for commercial.
So how are you differentiating that number compared to the 4.55? What's the difference in how you're coming to that number? I guess I didn't follow the the total county value change is 4.55, but this value increase down here is 3.4. So what's the difference in those numbers? Or maybe I just didn't follow it.
The total county is total everything, every class, for any reason whatsoever. It's just last year's total value to this year's total value.
Okay, and this is just the single family.
This is broken down just a single family, throwing out anything that had new construction or remodel. That changed significantly. If you owned your house last year and you didn't really do a lot to it, what did it increase? What was that increase look like?
Okay, that explains it.
That was the purpose in that number. And so there can be value increases for a number of reasons. We tried to take the properties that didn't change from last year to this year and see what was the typical increase of those. Any other questions on that? I put in there some, it was basically a legislative platform with the Kansas County Appraisers. You can read through that. The culmination of that, well, for the most part, there's two bills. If you look at the first portion has to do with the value cap, and all the County Appraisers Association is saying is, if you want to cap values, let's report market value, because some parcels will have to be at market value for every parcel, but then you can have a separate taxable value, because if you limit an increase in value at some parcels, you're going to be at market value, some parcels you're not going to be, and if you don't report market value overall, you're never going to be able to tell whether you're reaching market value or not, and there's going to be no way to measure that. So a parcel could have a market value of $200,000, but only about say 180 of that thousand of that may be taxable. Makes sense. But the various proposals had new construction would have to go on in market value. Most of the proposals had sales of homes would have to go on. If it sold, it would have to go on market value. So you have to have some method. And if it goes up less than 4%, they may be at market value too, those properties. And so you have to have some uniform method of measuring, are you even achieving market value to use as your starting point. And if you're at all kinds of different values, there's those ratio studies, which I pointed out to earlier, where we're at last year, those go out the window. They become meaningless to identify where you're at.
Are you pretty involved in the association, or do you attend these meetings? Or my impression is that we're not going to get any kind of property tax reform out of the legislature this year. Is that what your organization's telling you?
Well, there certainly has been other priorities put forth in the legislature. We don't control what's happening in the legislature.
No, but
this is what we put here is what our association as a whole was saying to the legislature on that. We're leaving them to identify. We had a legislature reception. This is what we're trying to tell our legislatures.
It's just
interesting. We're trying to stay out of the decision whether the cap values or not. Does that make sense? That's
right. Which that's good. I'm glad. I was glad that the Kansas Association of Counties also changed that they could allow for it now.
Right.
So, but what's going to happen though is you're mailing these all out this week, and we always get a lot of correspondence after that.
And it may bubble up again in the legislature. There's some hurdles there. There's constitutional amendment with what has been proposed in the past. There were some other options discussed on an 8-year average value too. There are some other things floating around out there.
Well, we're pushing for it, but I'm afraid nothing's going to happen.
You said this year? If you don't happen in an election year, it's never going to happen, Mike.
It's disappointing.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's not to say we understand that there's going to be
You're doing
some
your
shifts.
job, Bob.
What's that?
You're doing your job.
So, yeah. Anyhow, the next thing is the personal property. So last year there was a bill out there. As I talked earlier, they're required to file every year. To do away with that requirement to file every year, you're required to have it when you acquire the property. You're initially required to file with the county appraisers, but then you don't have to file every year. So therefore, if you don't sign the piece of paper every year, you don't get assessed the penalties. That legislation was out there last year, and it's still out there and active. That is, one of the bills. Sometimes there's two of them, but Senate Bill 127 is the one. It would also reduce those penalties from 5% a month to 2% a month to a maximum of I'm trying to remember. I think maximum of like 10%, and the failure to file would be 12%, I believe. And that would only apply to those when they initial filing, because once it's filed, you're not required to file year after year. So we were supporting those efforts, although people probably won't tell us when they get rid of the property, and that's going to present a problem.
They just get to keep paying on it.
What's that?
They just get to keep paying on it.
Yeah. So, well, it always, people tend, even though we send change of value notices, they tend to ignore them. Even though they get tax bills sometimes, they tend to ignore them, and it becomes an emergency when they can't get their tax because they got outstanding personal property there. And they say, well, we got rid of that 3 years ago. That's what we deal with.
I understand.
That bill also gives, when I said only the Board of Tax Appeals has the authority to abate that penalty for excusable neglect, it also gives the county appraiser that authority. That same bill does. So that's another change it does. And then Senate Bill 484. This exempts certain personal property. Most of it is watercraft, boats, motors, and trailers. All this originally was in the other personal property class, which is assessed at 30% of market value. A few years ago, they reduced, they got a constitutional amendment actually to create a separate class for watercraft, and then they made it at 5% assessment rate. The total valuation for watercraft assessed is $1,076,722 in Leavenworth County against just the county's mill levy, the 35 mills county levy. That generates $38,520 in property taxes. The other, they're prorated on and off. They require quite a bit of work, watercraft do. The other part of this bill is ATVs, off-road vehicles, golf carts, other certain motorized vehicles be exempt. They fall under that other non-commercial, it's called 6A category. They are assessed at 30%. Originally, it was trailers having a gross weight of 2,000 pounds. That got changed to 12,000 pounds, which greatly increased the number of trailers. First, it was just those small trailers that we were trying to get rid of. So that increased that quite a bit. Now, keep in mind, not all these are on the tax rolls now, because if it's used as farm machinery equipment, so if somebody has an ATV that they're using out there for feeding cattle, checking fences, whatnot, mending fences, those are exempt. if it's business machinery and equipment they're using in a commercial operation, and the equipment was purchased on or after July 1st, 2006, it's exempt. So there's a number of ways these are already exempt.
I remember that one.
Remember 2006?
Yeah.
don't we?
Yeah.
So, right. So the total other category, it wouldn't eliminate the total other category, but it would do away with quite a bit of it, probably better than half. Probably most of it is our total assessed value last year, what we certified, is $2,233,503. That it equates to, again, against 35 mil levies for the county of $79,910. But these are, things that were very, very difficult to administer, and that's why there was an impetus behind it.
Right.
So we just lose over 100,000.
Right off the bat.
It's all good.
I would expect no less.
Is there any other questions?
I noticed you opposed your organization opposes the county appraiser being elected. I just want to pose a couple questions. If the county appraiser was elected, they would still have to comply with the property valuation division regulations. Is that correct?
Depends on what legislation said, that proposed that election. But as of now, yes. I mean, if that's the only thing they changed, yes.
So by electing the appraiser, they're not going to be able to, under current law, they're not going to change the way the appraisal is done.
No, it's not necessarily going to change.
So people that are wanting to elect an appraiser, by electing them, you're not necessarily going to have any change in the way this is handled, just by making an elected position.
Right. The laws won't change. How to do this, the procedures, pretty much the procedures. But a lot of what we do is regulated by law and then oversaw by the state. So it doesn't change any of that. It doesn't, So.
And we've had people, even legislators, that have thought that you decide what the actual values are going to be.
Well, we do value it, but
you
we have certain requirements, certain standards.
We tell him what.
Right. Yeah.
That's what they.
Yeah.
We
I didn't explain it quite right.
We tell him we need so many dollars.
You
and
know
come up with it.
what you're going to get. I mean, the valuation when I come today and deliver it to you. We've never, we don't have any conversations about it beforehand.
But the bottom line is you have to follow the law that the state statutes and the Constitution establish on property valuation.
We're required to value it at market value.
Yeah.
And we are measured as to whether we're achieving that standard. And if we don't achieve that standard, we have to change things so we are achieving that standard.
That's
if we were consistently at 80%, we're going to have to, we would be out of compliance, and we have to submit a plan to be in compliance, which would mean we'd have to increase the values to come within statutory. And statutory is 90% to 110%.
And your office has always been very close.
And that's one of the things I was going to bring up in this. The biggest takeaway I look at in Bob's reports every time is your boss, Property Valuation Department in Topeka, or PVD, says that you have to carry current market value on every property. And it gives you a parameter where you have to be within 10%. And the way they check that to make sure you have current market value is when a house sells, it has to have sold for between 10% above or 10% below what the county appraiser has on it. And so what I wanted to point out was I wanted to tell Mr. Weber, I appreciate the numbers here. You had to have had at least 90% of what a property sold for, or 110%. And your numbers here are consistently about 93% of what a property sold for. So he's keeping the values on the properties as low as he can possibly
Yep.
can to stay in compliance with his boss,
Yep.
Property Valuation Department in Topeka, without getting in trouble. The closer he can get to 90%, the better off our taxpayers are. It's the small little window that we can adjust, and he's keeping it to the lowest side possible. So much so that in 2022, it looks like he was out of compliance a little bit, below 90%. So for him to stay in compliance with his boss, Property Valuation Department in Topeka, he has to keep those sale prices within 10% of what his value is and what they actually sold for. And he's keeping them almost 10% to the low side.
And you're following the regulations that they write in Topeka and the statutes that they have created in the legislature. You're not following the regulations that the county commissioners create.
Because we don't get
We don't
to
have
create them.
Right.
have
I mean,
any.
but that's
But our
confusion.
legislators and even our local legislators
People are
have
confused
accused
about
us
that.
of that. And
Yeah,
that
we
is
have
not
absolutely nothing to
true.
do with the appraiser's office.
Right.
Topeka controls what
We
Bob has to do.
appoint an appraiser, and I believe it's every 3 years. Correct me if I'm wrong. 4 years. Every 4 years.
We appoint one that has to be on PVD's list.
Right. An approved list that has to have the training, but then they're appointed. They have to follow all the rules that are established in Topeka.
The market value is state law. It's not just public laws. And keep in mind, that's the median ratio. If you're at 100%, that's the middle ratio, so you would be over that, as many as under that, really tightly around that 100%. So that's why if you're at 100%, you're appraising some properties, a number of properties at over that mark. So.
Right.
And the other thing I wanted to point out was in the parcel count by class, if you don't understand how appraisal mapping works, these numbers kind of look misleading. For instance, we have 22,000 residential parcels, but only 700 exempt parcels. So you have to understand the way appraisal mapping works is, for instance, Fort Leavenworth, with the thousands of buildings they have up there, count as only 4 or 5 parcels because they're only separated by section lines. So even though there's thousands of buildings on Fort Leavenworth, that's 4 or 5 parcels. The VA has hundreds of buildings,
That's why I was
one
wondering where
parcel.
we're getting at 700 when I'm sitting there thinking I can think of
Exactly.
lots of buildings.
Exactly. The VA has hundreds of buildings up there, one parcel. St. Mary's College, hundreds of buildings, one parcel. Federal Prison has the prison itself, all the guardhouses, one parcel. So when you look at these numbers, you got to keep in mind that
was gonna
it's
be
the
my
way
question.
the mapping
I thought there
works.
was more than 700.
Yeah. They only count as one parcel a lot of times.
We got a lot of tax exempt.
So if you look at the dollar amount, the valuation is the better way to look at that.
Valuation would be huge.
Yeah, the county's worth $6 billion, or $8 billion. $3.5 billion of that is exempt property.
You have a very difficult job, and you're doing a great job at
Thank you.
establishing those numbers.
I would hate to see it be an elected position.
Yeah, I agree.
I have to be donating to the campaign.
Well, the purpose is to try to keep it not political.
Yeah, we don't
right.
want
And I agree. I think the
Political
system.
favors to anybody.
I think
That's
the way
that
the system
opens the
is
door
right
for
now
corruption.
works
Yeah.
because,
I agree with you.
if you do get a bunch of elected officials that just want to go after an appraiser, it still has to be through the board,
Yeah.
not the final decision.
Well, it's like when we went through reappraisal in '98 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
30 or 40 appraisers lost their jobs across the state because the people were mad because valuations went up. When all the appraisers were doing was following the rules that property valuation set up.
If you want to change the rules,
So
we got
an
to change the
elected
rules.
appraiser would put us right back into that same situation.
Right. But that's the only way you're going to change the
I know,
rules,
but good luck with that.
and that's where we're at. Unfortunately, people are going to lose their homes if we leave it the way it is.
Do you have anything else, Bob? Anybody else?
No,
have any
thank you,
questions?
Bob. Always appreciate it.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, Bob.
Thanks.
Other presentations and discussion items by any of the board members? Doug, do you have anything?
Yeah, I do. Yes, I do. Let's see. Went to the township board meeting Fairmount Township last Thursday. They're getting ready to build on to the South Station to try to man that better while they close 155th Street. And we already talked about St. Patrick's Day Parade. I did not attend the Livestock Buyers Association dinner, the fundraiser for the 4-H kids on the livestock. They raise money every year, and it'd be the second year they've done it, and they split that amongst all the kids that sell at the auction. I feel bad I couldn't attend because I wasn't able to get a ticket. They sold out in the middle of January.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Wow,
so
that's good.
I haven't heard how it turned out, but I'm sure they raised a lot of money, and I really appreciate that. They're not here asking for money from the county. They are raising this money and doing it for the 4-H kids.
Yep.
And that's a very good way. And, you know, these other organizations that want to come here and ask for money, they need to have their own fundraisers, as far as I'm concerned. Commissioner Culverson and I attended the Mid-America Regional Council meeting yesterday, and we voted against the the Priority Climate Action Plan. There's a lot of discussion on that. The vote turned out 11 yes and 7 no. So we did, you know, the message did get out there on that. I was told, asked a question about if they said this was all voluntary for the counties and cities to do, but if we didn't do it, would we be penalized on projects? And I was told no.
Got that on the tape?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it was more like, well,
I find that
probably not.
I find that hard to believe.
So, but hey, I was a little confused. They had a group picture of you there doing this.
we just witnessed
You're
it.
carbon by 2050. I thought, well, maybe Mike wants me to change my vote.
That was probably from like 3 years ago. I don't know when it was. When we
Tom
went
was
there.
Did you guys just do it recently?
I don't know when we did that.
I
think
It was
they
probably
used
at
it
the meeting we went to.
Yeah.
It was probably at that meeting.
I
But
think they used the picture or something.
no, it's very concerning what they're trying to do and very disappointing.
Well, that's why I brought this up. I got this yesterday. It said Federal Highway Administration finalized a rule late last year imposing greenhouse gas emission performance measures on state transportation departments and metropolitan planning organizations when determining state projects. This would saddle you, you know, with burdensome unlawful requirements, which negatively impact rural communities and the supply chain. Federal Highway moved forward with this rule despite knowing they did not have the authority to finalize it. It needed congressional approval. So with that being said, how are we going to get any federal money for County Road 30 or 235th Street?
It's going to be pretty tough.
So, I haven't heard that that's tied to it. But
Well, I mean, the
maybe
first
address
phase
it.
probably isn't. But are we ever going to get that money if the government shuts down?
If there's,
Well, we have no control over that.
Well, I understand that, but we got KDOT funds, we got the federal funds, and we keep kicking that can down the road. Are we going to, are KDOT funds in jeopardy on this by not going
Supposedly, that they have told us that they're willing to move the deadline back. But Mark, maybe you can address that.
Well, I think, first of all, the grant funding you're referring to is, it was I don't think they call them earmarks anymore, but it came through Moran's office. It wasn't through necessarily like a competitive federal highway, but it will be released, I'm sure, through the Federal Highway Administration. So any of the rules that they, I guess, put on these types of things we'll have to follow. As far as the KDOT funding, they've told us that they would grant us an extension because we're waiting on federal funding because there's a lot of people out there doing that. I don't know that we've seen the official paperwork, but I think that's reasonable that we'll get that.
Well, what happens if they just keep extending this and not really pass the budget?
I don't know what happens. It won't be good.
I mean, how much is this increasing the price of the
we're going to know in a
cost?
week, huh?
I mean, how are we going to bid a project and
Not have
July
any.
or August and say, hey, you got to have $2 million spent by October.
Yeah.
We're still seeing 20% or greater increases in bids that we're doing now. From
And it's not going to get
last
any
year.
better.
20-25%
Not for a while.
a year minimum. Sometimes it's less than a year actually, but I think it's reasonable to expect that by delaying bidding this project, it's adding 20 to 25% to the overall cost.
Do we have a schedule? We mentioned at our previous meeting we were going to try to get the folks from Mark to come and.
Yeah, they told me yesterday they were coming up.
Yeah.
You know what date it will be?
I have a phone call with them this afternoon to finalize that, but they thought they'd be here. I think it's on the 6th, but
6th.
again,
Next week.
that's
Next week.
That's pretty quick.
Next week's going to be busy.
Well, again, I don't know that that's the official date because I have a phone call this afternoon to go talk with them about it.
That's just my concern. That's all I have.
Okay. Commissioner Stevens?
I have, I know Commissioner Cause and I both attended the report from the legislators, mid-session report, and disappointing, to say the least. No action on property tax relief. Sounds like you might get some action on some income tax changes, but I don't think you're going to get any action on property tax relief. I hope. I mean, that's the way I interpret it. Commissioner Cause can address that. But also disappointing is this from the Kansas Rural Water Association. Rural water districts will be interested to know that House Bill 2493 is dead. And I won't read the whole part, but it comes down and says, KRWA, which is the Kansas Rural Water Association, testified in opposition to the bill because many contracts such as water storage, tank maintenance, and purchase of supplies, including meter systems, are negotiated. Requiring public bidding would have unnecessarily increased costs due to bid prep, legal fees, and bonding. And I can just tell you, I used to be the chairman of Rural Water District 13. This is completely ridiculous that they would oppose this. And it is, as we have already seen, it's allowing the taxpayers to be bilked.
Yep.
And unfortunately, all they did to kill this was they sent a letter to the committee, and they didn't even testify. It says here they testified. They didn't really physically testify. They just sent a letter, and this shows special interests have a lot of power. They killed the bill. It didn't make it through the turnaround. It's dead.
But would the bill have had a better chance if it just spelled out road projects?
Well, that's what it would be narrower.
Right. I think if it would have just said road instead of their whole thing.
You could have that.
Seems to me that special interest groups are controlling Topeka.
And it's interesting to note that it did clear the committee. It came out of the committee with pretty good support, but the speaker used Rule 1507, I believe it was, to basically kill it for the year.
Right, that's why I said
So when they say that one person doesn't control things,
Oh, yeah.
I think sometimes they can.
No, in Topeka they do.
If you can't get something done in an election year, you're never going to get anything done.
It,
Right, true.
it would be helpful if we had a committee chair from Leavenworth County, or someone in leadership.
Well, and
You
just
know.
to explain to people listening to this that maybe don't understand what we're talking about, water districts are not required to go out for bid on projects. So when we spend your taxpayer dollars on, for instance, a road project where some water line assets would have to be moved, we've seen hundreds of thousands of dollars difference on a project that went out for bid and one that does not go out for bid. So what we're trying to do is protect taxpayer dollars by asking water companies to go out for bid when they do projects. Right now, they don't have to go out for bid.
Well, I think that's how we need to choose our projects.
I think
Water districts that will work with you, do a project in their area.
I think after this, I think that's probably a good idea.
also to note is that all other governmental entities are required to bid their projects.
Yeah.
It's over a certain dollar amount.
They're the only ones.
All
that don't.
other governmental entities. And all, I think, and I could be wrong on this one, but I'm pretty confident that all other utilities have to report to the KCC,
That's
which
correct.
requires bidding of of their projects also, so that the ratepayers don't get bilked. Rural water districts, to my knowledge, are the only ones that fall within this gap of not having to bid their work. And there's a reason that they fight so hard to keep it that way, and that's your special interest groups. But I do want to say that I appreciate what Representative Johnson did for us.
Absolutely.
By taking this bill forward and pushing it through. It did get a committee hearing, and it did pass out of the committee, but due to Rule 1507, again, I think that's the right number, it was killed for this year. There's still a chance it could get bundled, but I kind of doubt that. But remember, even what we consider no-brainer policy sometimes takes 3 to 5 years to make it out of Topeka, like the tornado bill.
I mean,
So that's so I'm happy that it made it as far as it did this year, and hopefully
It did surprise me.
Representative
Back on
Johnson
the
The
agenda.
more light we shed on this, the further it'll go.
Yeah.
It's like the wave at the ball game. It goes
It
a little
might-
bit further each time.
might gain a little momentum.
I agree, Mark, and I was surprised to see it go this
And
far,
we did
too.
have earlier this year, we talked about a policy, Commissioner Smith, on how we, with projects that have utility moves, that if they're not going to public bid them, then we're not going to do the project.
that's what I think we need to
I
do.
have the policy ready. I just wanted to see what happened with this bill, because if the bill went through, there'd be no need for us to have a policy. So I have it ready.
Bring it
I will have it
forward.
on.
Bring it forward. I'll
It'll
ready
be,
to vote.
it won't probably be next week. It might be a couple weeks out, because I know I'd like to have Bill here for that when we're talking about it, and he's going to be out in a couple of weeks. So it'll probably be 3 weeks down the line towards the end of March, but it's ready to go. So
Yep,
That sounds good.
good to me.
Commissioner Stevens, you have anything else?
That's it.
Commissioner Cos, you have anything?
We did we went and attended the legislative update this past week, and then I had yesterday the Adult Community Corrections Advisory Board meeting, and some of the decisions are going to be made the next quarter when we can get some of the financials and things that were not taken care of, not by any fault of our staff, but by the state. There's things that they didn't get done, so that'll be taken care of the next meeting. I have a transit authority meeting as soon as I leave here to go to Kansas City for that, and that's about it.
I've just got a couple, Jeff. Met with monthly luncheon with Tim Vandal yesterday, the city administrator. Got an update on the pool, which is going to be starting pretty soon out in Lansing. As y'all know, the voters passed it by a close vote. Also got an update on the college, and they're coming right along. I don't have a timeline on the digging. And the apartment complex that's going in, the affordable complex that's going in there by the old ones off West Mary Street. And we just discussed about what's going on in the county. And, of course, one of the topics was property tax. And just kind of shaking our head that an election year we can't get moving on it. I think Doug's completely right, Commissioner Smith's completely right. If we don't get moving on this year, I don't know when we can. That's all I have, Chair.
Okay. I had Leavenworth City Commission meeting last night. I was riveting. I think I got all paid back. Commissioner Cos and me split the meetings, and every time she goes, it's 3 hours long, and I go, it's 20 minutes. I think I got all caught up last night. They did the budget last night. So
Oh, okay.
presentation.
Is that right, Ed? 2 hours? 2 hours?
Just for that, plus the rest of them. KC's putting on a budget program in El Dorado, March 8th. I'm going to try to attend that. I'm trying to see if it's a Zoom meeting. If not, then I'll probably be going. That's on a Friday. A couple things that triggered me on that is they're going to talk about other sources of income for county government besides taxes, and also they're going to talk about budgets being presented to the public as far as like letting the public see what the county budgets are, presenting those on internet or paper,
Ways to get it out there, too.
yeah, media or whatever. So I thought that'd be interesting to see what everybody else is doing.
Yep.
That's all I have.
We went to the JCAB meeting.
Oh, yeah, we did good.
What's that?
Mike and I attended the JCAB meeting last week,
Okay.
last Thursday.
Heard that was interesting.
You and I attended the, what was that meeting? The planning.
Oh, yeah.
Douglas County.
Douglas
planning.
County.
Did you go to that?
Well,
Yeah.
Via Zoom. We
Oh,
we
okay.
zoomed in.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Planning for.
Yeah.
Trying to remember what the name of it was now.
Sustainable.
Oh, yeah.
blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And John Jacobson. Sat in
Blah,
with
blah,
us.
blah. Okay.
All right. If no other business.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and second.
Aye.
Aye. Motion adjourned.